Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hello everyone, welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast. Now, today I want to talk to a question or a concern that many parents that have kids with eczema, with allergies, with food intolerances have, and that is, why is my child reactive and the next child is not? Or why does my child have allergies? Or why does this particular child have allergies when none of my other children have allergies? And the answer to this is not straightforward. It is complex. But I want to sort of talk to some of the points and share an analogy with you to help you maybe see your child's allergies, your child's eczema, which are very much often tied up with allergies or a reactive system, in a bit of a different light. So we know that, certain kids in certain families can react while others don't. We know there are genetic predispositions definitely at play. And we know that when it comes to eczema and allergies, every child looks completely different. Some kids have eczema that are related to environmental triggers, even if parents don't know it. Some kids have eczema that are more related to food triggers. Some have diagnosed allergies, that's more and more common, like eggs or peanuts or dairy. And there is a lot of kids that are reacting to environmental triggers, and that can be quite murky and confusing to figure out what it is your child is reacting to, particularly when it's not seasonal, like, hay fever in spring will tell us that it's some sort of pollen or grass that your child is reacting to. It narrows it down somewhat. But there are kids that are reacting to environmental triggers year round. That can be linked to things like dust mites or mold or pet dander. And then there are those kids that react to a variety of things. They might have eczema, they might have environmental allergies, they also might have food intolerances. So it looks different for every child. But the question comes back to, why can one child eat a food or roll around in grass or, have exposure to dust mites without a problem, without any sort of symptoms, while another one will get itchy skin, they'll get congestion, they'll start sneezing, they'll get digestive issues. So to understand what's happening, it helps to look at how the immune system actually learns what is safe and what is not. So it's, I guess, important to understand that the immune system is constantly learning, particularly in early life where that, immune development, much of that immune development is happening. But your child's immune system, it's not born knowing what's safe and what to react to. It is that sort of develops over time. So from the moment babies are born, their immune system is constantly being trained by exposure to the world around them, by exposure to microbes, to foods, to things in their environment, and also, really like to bacteria in their gut is has a huge part to play when it comes to reactivity and immune development. So when our kids are exposed to all of these different things in the environment around them, in the foods that they eat, in food particles through breast milk, it helps the immune system to develop tolerance. It helps the immune system to learn what is safe and what needs a reaction. If our kids are exposed to a virus, then it needs to react. But if our child is exposed to dust mites, then we want it not to react. Now, I've talked about the hygiene hypothesis before. It's a well-known concept in immunology, and it if you haven't heard it before, I'll give you a quick rundown. So the hygiene hypothesis suggests that reduced exposure to microbes early in life contributes to the rise in allergic conditions. So when our kids' immune system has fewer opportunities to learn what is safe, when there's fewer opportunities of exposure to different microbes, it becomes more likely to react to things that are actually harmless. So researchers have observed that children who grow up with more microbial exposure, time outdoors, exposure to animals, diverse environments often have lower rates of allergies and eczema. So this is really interesting when it comes to, looking at kids with allergies and eczema. And of course, if your child already has allergies or eczema, it's definitely not too late, but it's important to understand that early life exposure to different microbes is training the immune system. It's teaching the immune system what is safe and what is not. And unfortunately, in our modern Western environment and with our modern Western diet, there are less of those training opportunities for our kids' immune systems. We sort of need to be a bit more proactive at exposing our kids to different microbes because our kids are spending more time inside. They are living in a more sanitized environment if we're living in the Western world, and that doesn't do their immune system any favors. So one way to think about the immune system and sort of to follow on from this hygiene hypothesis is to think about your kid's immune system like a guard dog. So a well-trained guard dog recognizes real threats and responds to them, but it ignores harmless threats like visitors or the postman or the phone ringing, for example. So it stays calm most of the time, but it recognizes when there's a real threat and it responds to that. And that's ideally what we want our kids' immune systems to do. But when it comes to those overreactive immune systems, it's sort of like a guard dog that has become overprotective or undertrained. So it starts barking at, responding at the postman, the neighbor, a leaf blowing past, the phone ringing. It's not the dog's fault. It just has had inadequate training. So I hope you can see, this all sort of coming together because this is what we see in kids with eczema and allergies. They have this overprotective, overreactive guard dog as their immune system. Their immune system is reacting to things that are normally harmless. And there are a number of factors why some immune systems become overreactive. Genetics is a big one. That early microbial exposure, coming back to that hygiene hypothesis, the gut microbiome and how that develops and the things that affect the gut microbiome, our lifestyle, our diet, the way our babies are born and fed, really affect that early gut microbiome development. And when it comes to eczema, the skin barrier, the function of the skin barrier, if the skin barrier is not robust, then, things can sort of leak through the skin and set off an immune response. And then there's environmental influences, of course, as well, beyond, what we've already talked about. So over time, these factors influence how our kids' immune systems respond. And some immune systems, for a variety of these sorts of reasons, become more easily triggered. It's not that you've done anything wrong as a parent. It's just that potentially your child has a bit of a genetic predisposition, and some of those factors that I mentioned are potentially at play. But what parents and also commonly the Western medical model do is focus on triggers, what is triggering our child's allergies or eczema. And yes, this is important. Like we look at triggers as well for sure, but it's not the whole picture. So if we're focusing on the foods that are triggering our child's eczema or allergies, the environmental substances that are triggering our kids' eczema and allergies. Removing those isn't only part of the picture. It removes the trigger, but it doesn't change how the immune system is behaving or reacting. So we might get some results, either short-term or long-term, but it hasn't done anything to change, or regulate the immune system. I was going to say change the way the immune system responds, regulate the immune system. So then with that sort of a more reactive immune system, even when we're removing triggers, we can find ourselves in a situation where our kids are now triggered by different things and we're having to remove more and more things from their diet or environmental exposures. So we want to really make sure that we are addressing that immune system regulation rather than just removing triggers. So although a lot of that immune development happens really early on in life, the encouraging thing is that immune systems are highly adaptable. We see kids grow out of allergies all of the time. Allergies are really common in kids and they often outgrow them. Not always, but they do outgrow them. And that's an example of an immune system changing, becoming more adaptable. So our kids' immune systems and even our adult immune systems, they're constantly learning, developing and adjusting. So when we support the foundations of immune regulation, we often see the immune system becoming less reactive over time. So I want you to feel hopeful about this if you have kids with eczema and allergies. We see this time and time and time again. I'm not sort of claiming that we can cure anaphylactic allergies. Yes, kids grow out of anaphylactic allergies. Yes, it's important to support immune regulation when your kids have, anaphylactic allergies. But it doesn't always kind of cure the severe allergy that a child has. But it's still important to do that work. And what we see time and time again in those highly reactive kids is that they become less reactive over time when we support immune regulation. And we also see other areas of their health improve. For example, we commonly see kids with digestive symptoms and discomfort, and digestive reactions in kids with eczema and allergies. And when we start regulating the immune system, supporting that immune regulation, reducing that immune reactivity, we see kids being able to tolerate a wider variety of foods that leads to them getting a wider variety of nutrients. That improves their energy levels. It improves their sleep. So they're not scratching and congested all night. So it's a really core thing that we work on with all kids with eczema and allergies because it improves their quality of life. So we want to focus on regulating that immune system. So what can we do to do that? So the gut microbiome is hugely important when it comes to immune regulation. Nutrients are important when it comes to immune regulation. One example is vitamin D. Our kids' bodies need vitamin D for immune regulation or to support immune regulation. The positive side effect of that is vitamin D is also really important in the strength of the immune system when fighting off infections as well. Supporting the skin barrier. Again, this often comes back to nutrients. Our kids need certain nutrients to support for a healthy skin barrier. For example, things like vitamin A and omega-3s are really important. We also can reduce that inflammatory load on our kids' system. That really helps to regulate the immune response as well. Now, this could involve, removing those known triggers, but there's much more to it. Reducing that overall inflammatory load can look like, changes to the diet to more of a whole food diet, or at least starting to increase the amount of whole foods and reducing the amount of processed foods, reducing the amount of toxins our kids are exposed to. All of these things make a difference to inflammatory load, which help to support that immune regulation. And exposing our kids to more natural environments can really help as well, no matter how old they are. The very act of being outside, they don't have to be eating dirt or anything like that, but the very act of playing outside helps to expose our kids to more microbes, which helps to support immune regulation as well. So all of these factors add up to supporting a more balanced immune response. And what we look at specifically for each child is a little bit different, but there's some general sort of things that we, focus on with kids with eczema and allergies to support that immune regulation. So if your child has eczema or allergies, no matter how old they are, I want you to know there are things that you can do beyond treating symptoms and managing symptoms with things like antihistamines and steroid creams to regulate their immune system. Think back to that overprotective guard dog. We want to calm down that overprotective guard dog. It's just trying to do its job. It's just trying to protect our child's body, but we need to calm it down. And that's really what immune regulation work is doing, is calming down that overprotective guard dog. So with the right support, your child's immune responses can become calmer and more balanced over time. Now, if you're listening to this podcast in real time, I'm running some live masterclasses this week all about our natural approach to eczema and allergies. So I'd love for you to come along. You can find the link to sign up in the show notes, or you can head over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, and you'll find some information there. If you're listening to this later on, this podcast, then you can always email us at support@naturalsuperkids to find out more about our, how we can support kids with eczema and allergies. And you can also follow us over on Instagram, where we often share insights for parents and practical tips for parents to help you support your kids with eczema and allergies. I hope this episode has helped you see your kids' reactivity, allergies, eczema in a bit of a different light, and it's given you some hope in terms of that there are things that you can do beyond those medications, which can be helpful for symptomatic kind of improvement, but don't really do anything to regulate that immune system over time. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share this episode with anyone that might find it interesting or might need to hear, a bit of a different spin on eczema and allergies in children. I will be back next week. Next week, we have a guest episode. I'm really excited to bring you this chat. It's going to be really helpful for you as a parent. If you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling that busy brain. So stay tuned for that one coming up next week. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.